103.5 FM, New Haven, streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. Follow us and share.
Hello and welcome to WNHH Radio's Dateline New Haven. I'm your host, Paul Bass, inviting you to look behind the headlines on the stories that make the Elm City tick. Patrick Dunn is in the headlines, or at least the organization he runs. The New Haven Pride Center is in the headlines this week. It's Pride Week, folks, and he's here to tell us all about it. And thanks to Yale New Haven Hospital for providing support for today's program. Patrick Dunn, welcome, I guess, back to the WNHA studio, right? You've been
Thank
kind
you.
of a regular.
Yeah, I've been on, I think, twice. Sorry, I'm just trying to share the live feed to the various places.
That's right, because I'll bet you're pretty tapped in there.
I manage like 8,000 Facebook pages. I think.
I guess that's the average, probably 2018. If you're running an organization that tries to connect people with people, and if not everybody's over 80, you gotta have those Facebook pages.
Well, and it's one of those things that, I mean, at the Pride Center and Pride New Haven, we have multiple pages just for the organization. So we have a Pride New Haven page, we have a New Haven Pride Center page, and then we have the Dorothy Awards page for our big award ceremony that we do in March. But then in addition to that, I manage the Facebook accounts for a bunch of different community organizations just as a volunteer. So
all right, let's fire them up on all fronts. You want everyone to see that you're on the Dateline New Haven. So especially this week, you need those Facebook pages because it is Pride Week, the annual week when you have events going, not so much on Tuesday, Wednesday. I guess you had an author and book signing. But otherwise, for the 8-day week, as the Beatles dubbed it, you got a lot of things going on. So how's it going so far this year? We're 4 days in. 5 days
It's going great. So we kicked off on Sunday with an amazing duo concert with Laura Clapp and Tomboy from Brooklyn in partnership with All Sounds Fair, which is this incredible lesbian-owned music production company based here in Connecticut. And she produces these kind of large-scale benefit concerts that really are aimed to make our community, whether it's the LGBTQ plus community or the larger Connecticut community, a better place by doing these concerts and then donating a large portion of the proceeds back into the community. So we kind of kicked off Pride with that kind of high note of amazing music.
And where was it?
We did it out at the Space Ballroom.
That's a great. I was there last week. They've done a nice job.
And they just renovated it, and it's awesome. I performed there back before they renovated it. And let's just say that their dressing room went from like a solid C to like a AA plus.
Oh, AA plus.
Yeah.
So what's different in the dressing room?
Well, there's when I performed there, this was back in 2017. The dressing room was very much like this awesome like college dorm with mismatched furniture and holes in the walls from various artists probably accidentally bumping into the walls. And they've kind of completely renovated it, and they put in like a kitchen so that and redid like the bathroom space, so you have like a shower stall and a bathroom area, and then they have these beautiful red leather couches, and it's just very it makes you feel like weirdly very warm and welcomed in the space in a way. Not that the old way didn't, because it had its own charm. It's like it's like a New York
charm,
it's a New York venue kind of feel of like it might fall over at any minute, but you feel awesome to be there. And now it's just this like really really nicely renovated space, and then the whole inside looks amazing over there. Definitely looking forward to doing more things out at this
And did you get a good turnout?
We did. We had it was this, I would say, small but mighty crowd. We were hoping to sell maybe a few more tickets, but we did definitely have an awesome crowd there, and people were loving the music. I was not personally familiar with either of the artists. All Sound Fair had actually engaged both of them. Laura Clapp's just from the Shoreline, so she's a local girl, but both of them were incredible, awesome
Now, when I
voices.
think about lesbian music, I got to admit that I don't usually think of the Indigo Girls. I think of the artists who are still around, like Cheryl Wheeler and others from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Kind of always a singer-songwriter vibe. A lot of first-person songs, a lot of solo guitar, a lot of 1-4-5 with occasional minor thrown in. Chord progression. Is that where we are now?
Well, we have some amazing local queer female artists, and we're very fortunate. We're going to be featuring a lot of them this year at Pride. One of the kind of bigger, more commonly known names, probably in the particularly lesbian community, would be someone like Carrie Ashton, who's going to be performing on Sunday of Pride.
Next
Suzanne,
Sunday.
Yeah, this coming Sunday. Suzanne Sheridan, who's been doing the one woman band show in Connecticut for I think 20 plus years, and where she sings like traditionally male rock songs as a female vocalist. She's going to also be performing on Sunday.
There's
with
another
Carrie.
woman like that who lives in New Haven and Westville who tours nationally. I saw her at the Space. She was awesome. She does like a Ramones vibe.
I'll have to check her out.
Starts with the drum and it gets the guitar part. She's great. Yeah.
But then we also have these amazing young emerging artists too. Someone like Taja New, who's I actually don't know where Taja lives, but I know she's local to Connecticut. And she's this kind of young powerhouse POC queer artist that comes with like backup dancers and is absolutely stunning on top of it. But then, beyond just, talking about the queer women artists that we also have some amazing trans women that are performing this year. Nikki Azatica I guess she's based technically in New York City, but has a lot of local ties back to New Haven, and is this incredible kind of trans pop artist that's been around for years. Is super excited to be coming up to New Haven for Pride. Cynthia, who's a kind of local favorite artist, singer, songwriter, who performs at places like 168 York Street a lot. She'll be performing. And then we have all these like young kind of emerging artists too. One of our artists, I think he's like 19 maybe. His name's Seven Taylor, and he's so excited. And I love getting his emails because he's clearly like so excited to be a part of Pride. Every time he emails me, and which is usually twice a day.
Proud to be in Pride.
Exactly. And so we have a lot of artists like that. It's one of the beauties of having a kind of a festival or an event that's built by and for the community versus just built for the community. So much of how we create Pride in New Haven is thanks to the long-term investment of people like the founder, Rob, who is...
Totally.
Yeah. He's still, a member of our planning committee. He's our chair emeritus, we call him. But he was the founder. He's still involved. People like Karen, who's been running our entertainment for, at least 5 or 6 years. I remember my first Pride in New Haven. She was the one that brought me in. So, there's people like that, but then there's these like young people that reach out and want to be invited or want to be involved, and want to help plan. Just yesterday I was talking to one of our kind of emerging leaders in our young adult trans community. His name's Emerson, and he reached out because he's like, I really want to be involved with Pride more. Next year, can I, how can I get involved? Can I chair something? Can I volunteer? Like I want to help from the beginning versus just like coming in as a volunteer. So that's how we build this event.
And that's what the event we're talking about is Pride Week in New Haven.
Yes.
And it's going from the Sunday we just passed to the Sunday that's coming. We're talking to Patrick Dunn, who runs the New Haven Pride Center. Tom Griggs says, "Go Patrick!" 2 exclamation points. You got Patrick. And Chrissy Kexio, I'm sorry if I butchered your name. Big heart.
Oh,
listening up.
Hi guys.
All right, so you talked about a bunch of events, Patrick. So far, we've had some music, a lot of music. It sounds like like music's a big part of Pride Week.
This year it is. We so this was the first year that we did kind of a formal application process for Pride.
Oh.
For the longest time, I'm going to quote Karen, who's run our entertainment for years. She always says to me, like, I love how it is this year. It's so different. I remember when it was just, you would show up with a CD in your hand, you'd get in line and you just go on stage.
So it's kind of matured.
Yeah. In a really great way. One of the things that I found that happened this year, because we did this kind of more formal application process, we have a lot of people that are performing at Pride for the first time. And the great part of that, for me, that's really exciting is a lot of those people that are applying to be a part of Pride for the first time are younger artists. newer artists. A lot of them are people of color, which is amazing. I think we're going to have better representation of the diversity of our community this year than ever before. I mean, Pride New Haven, because we've always had a very local set of lineup versus some of the other prides around Connecticut, ours has always been very true to at least I would say 80 to 90% are Greater New Haven area artists.
And how many prides are there in Connecticut?
There's four really. There's four big prides. The four big prides being Pride in the Park, which is typically in June, which is done by my sister organization, Durango Community Center. Then you have New London Pride, which is really large, and they do it right out on the beach. And then Hartford Pride, which was last weekend, and then we're the last of kind of the big prides.
Right.
But there are prides all over Connecticut. Milford is getting one started right now. They're going to be doing some stuff.
That's a new day.
Yeah. They're going to have a table at Pride New Haven, but they're also there. I think they're working to do something this year in like November, if I remember correctly. But then there's like Fairfield County, or there's Fairfield Pride that they do at Trevi Lounge. There's Waterbury Pride there, so there's prides all over.
And Raven Mathern, I'm sorry if you got your name wrong, gives you a big heart. Jimmy Ticky says thanks for all the work you do at New Haven Pride Center. Patrick.
Raven is one of our amazing representatives here in Connecticut. She works down in the Stamford area. She's not a state rep, but she's working with our city and making sure that their city's
So how long
evolving.
have you had Pride in New Haven?
So Pride New Haven is celebrating its 20th anniversary this year.
20th?
Yeah.
Was it sort of revived? Because I seem to have heard a lot more about it in the last 4 years than I was hearing before.
Yeah. So a lot of people remember Pride New Haven back when it was on the New Haven Green, which was, years ago now. And it's evolved. It's had many different iterations and forms. And, I would say that for me, as someone who moved to New Haven just a little over almost 8 years ago now, my experience of Pride definitely kind of got in the last 5 to 6 years more predominant. Part of that was just that because I became a performer, I just became more involved naturally. But yeah, no, I think Pride New Haven has always had a really cool place in New Haven's arts and culture scene. Whether or not I think maybe what's happening now and why you might be noticing it more is less that it's evolved to be a bigger or better event, but more so that as our community has changed, meaning the larger community of New Haven, and embraced our queer community a little bit more in various different ways. How
has that happened?
I think it's a lot. It has to do with a lot of things. I think you can attribute shifts in mainstream media, things like RuPaul's Drag Race being this portal for drag to be considered more of an art form and less of an underground activity. You look at things like Pose, which is bringing the queer community into homes and audiences in a way that maybe it never really has before. But I think also, you look at things like the little things, things like how Lucy Gelman at the Arts Paper and Dan at the Arts Council have really focused on making sure that the queer arts community feels part of the larger arts community. Or you look at how some of our leaders in the business community have changed to be younger people, more queer people. So therefore, the business community is taking the queer community maybe differently, seriously in a different way.
Culture. It wasn't that long ago, late 70s, that the New Haven Police had a detail outside Partners Cafe where they would have a male cop entice a patron to solicit them and then arrest them.
Oh, yeah.
And they lost a lawsuit on that. And then in the late 80s, when there was at Yale, there was a whole gay activist converged on the city when there was controversy. I forget what Yale did, but the police improperly acted in the gay community about some event. And then went to the New Haven Police openly recruiting gay cops in the 90s, an out lesbian running the training academy. And there are, pretty visible gay and lesbian cops now to America. And I think we're in this, I want to hear about what you think about this. I think we're in this odd schizo moment in our society with LGBTQ.
We definitely are.
I mean, especially with trans rights, but also with gay marriage. The move for civil rights and recognition, acceptance of LGBTQ community, which wasn't even called all those initials not that long ago, has gone so fast that it's really been beyond what people my age could have believed would be possible when we were demonstrating for gay rights in the 80s. On the other hand, it looks like these storm clouds have come up over in the sky that all these, not that prejudice was gone or that everywhere you wanted to be, but it gone so fast, the acceptance in our lifetime, where even a Republican Supreme Court justice was writing the key opinion to legalize gay marriage, when not that many years before that, we were just agitating for just recognition of partnerships.
Yeah, I mean,
but now we're in this moment where there's a backlash. What's going on, and what's that like on the
it's
ground?
really interesting because it's interesting to think about it as like, a fast forward movement. When realistically the Stonewall riots will be celebrating its 50th anniversary in 2019, and 50 years is a long time. It's a lifetime for a lot of people, especially for large portions of our trans and gay male community that did not make it through the 80s or the 90s, and did not live to see some of the shifts in culture that have happened in the last, let's say, 10 years. I mean, I think back to in 2004 when marriage equality passed in Massachusetts. I was a student at the University of Hartford, and I turned to my very good friend, Sean, and I said, let's drive up to Massachusetts right now and get married because we're never going to see this in our lifetime as like a thing that happens nationwide. And I think that's very true, not because that right was so vital to me in that moment, but more true to this kind of perspective I had on the world, that
fragile. This happened. Let's hold on to it while it's there.
Exactly. And I think as I've become more of a dominant queer activist over the past 12 to 18 months, since I've been working more closely with the Pride Center, I've come to realize that there is, while on the surface it seems like we have made this huge fast forward and leap forward, realistically we actually haven't. And what's happened is we've, in some ways affected popular culture, which shifts kind of dynamics and viewpoints. But realistically, most queer people, if not, I'd go on a limb and say all queer people, are still second-class citizens in this country that we live in. When you look at something like, there's places in our country where if a trans person shows up to vote and their ID says male, but they present female, they will not be allowed to vote. Their right to vote in an election is taken away from them.
That sounds like a lawsuit. Although if it's a lawsuit, it's going to depend which federal court you go to.
Exactly. And when you're looking at some of the states, I was reading an article not too long ago specifically about this issue. And it was talking about how there's about 78,000 trans folk in 4 states that will be estimated not be allowed to vote in the next election, purely based on gender marker on their IDs.
Can there be any proactive legal
It's
work
one of
done?
those things where they also live in those states where there are religious freedom laws that protect the state employees from issuing IDs with correct gender markers on them. And so there were some interviews with some of the folks in that specific article about how they have had experience of going to have these changes made on their IDs and have been turned away multiple times from agencies, even when they go outside of their own counties. And people citing their religious beliefs as an excuse to why they can't do it that day. And so, we live in a country where that happens. We live in a country where 48 states, including Connecticut, it's legal to use a gay panic or a trans panic defense to defend murder or assault. That person, I found out that person was gay, so I attacked them out of defense because I was panicked. I didn't know what else to do. It's what it is. It's a legal defense in Connecticut.
Wow. So you need a law to say that's not illegal.
Yeah, and there are awesome senators and at the federal level actually fighting this right now to try to change at the federal level that kind of conversation. But we also live in a state, we live in Connecticut where it's estimated about 40% of our homeless youth defined as under 25, identify as LGBTQ+. Most of those are going to be people of color and transgender, non-conforming, non-binary people.
And you were present at a hearing, if I'm not mistaken, in Grand Avenue when there was opposition to a youth shelter, and youth being defined, as you said, up to 25.
Right.
What's the status of that, and what attitudes did you see? Was it about transgender people, or was it just not not a recognition of that need?
I think that a lot of us don't realize how many people are really homeless that are youth, and how homelessness affects our youth. As a lifetime nonprofit worker, I've only really ever had a career in nonprofit, with the exception of like when I worked at the school bookstore when I was in college.
That made a profit.
As much as you can make at $7 an hour. I am a victim of almost becoming homeless at 22.
Really?
At 22, I worked full-time at a nonprofit. I also had a second job working at a bar where I was making probably a couple $100 a weekend. And I could not pay my rent in downtown Hartford.
Wow.
And I couldn't afford a car to be able to get to work without being able to be within some level of walking distance. I was about an hour walk from work. And I lived in what would probably a lot of people would define as a low income neighborhood. And yet I could still not afford my rent. And had my mom not actually lent me $500, I was going to be evicted. And I could have very easily at 22, with multiple degrees from a very, well recognized university, and having a full-time job where I was working 40, 50, 60 hours a week, almost ended up homeless. So like the reality is that homeless is affecting my generation and the generation coming after me in a way that it's never affected, I think, the American people. And when you look at some of our youth that are homeless or experiencing levels of homelessness, and non-traditional homelessness, meaning maybe they're couch surfing 5 days a week and sleeping at home 2 days a week, or are trading sex for shelter. These young people have a very different experience than many of us, and I'm fortunate and unfortunate that I get to meet a lot of these youth coming to the center, because we have a amazing clothing exchange program that a lot of Elizabeth Larkin over at Youth Continuum has been referring a lot of their clients over to us, which has been awesome to meet some of these young people and find out what's going on with them, and why are they experiencing some of the things they're experiencing, what happened that brought them to where they are, and how can the center or other organizations around the city help them shift where they are in their lives.
Go, Mom. Matt Perrone says, cheers, Patrick. You do wonderful work. Sherry Nicole gives a heart. Robin Banks, New Haven is lucky to have you at the Pride Center, Patrick. And Levi Peterson has heart eyes and a big smile. So what about nationally? So that showed how even New Haven, which is a deep, deep blue city.
Yeah.
Even there might not be as much recognition, at least, of some of the needs facing the LGBTQ community, and in our state, we still have some throwback practices.
And one of the things.
What about nationally? What is at stake now with the Supreme Court hearings of Brett Kavanaugh? Is it going to be as with abortion, that we're going to divide it back in two countries, where we go back to the 1950s for LGBTQ people on the Confederate states and some of the Midwest, and do we keep moving forward on the coasts?
One of the things that I think is a good example of the national level conversation that's happening, the center recently applied for, and we made it to one of the final rounds of a national grant for LGBTQ plus centers. Just to put it out there, there's not that many of us nationally, even though there's quite a lot of cities that could probably use one. We were in the running for this really amazing capacity building grant that would have, I have to say, been quite life altering for us here in New Haven had we gotten it. But one of the things that we were actually told by the selection committee, when it came down to it, they had to make the decision on what parts of the country needed the money more. Someplace in Alabama just needs money more because they're dealing with different kinds of experiences in their own community. And I think that's true of when you look at the national conversation around LGBTQ rights, and you start breaking it down into, well, so what's the LGBTQ plus rights or LGBTQIP2SAA community facing? But then what is the trans community facing? What is the people of color queer community facing? What is the Jewish queer community facing? Everybody's facing different experiences, which makes it very hard to have the big conversation, right? Because, the needs of different parts of our community are very, very, very different. And the rights that are important to certain parts of our community have no importance for other parts of our community.
What about what we keep reading in the polls, that among Christian evangelicals, the younger generation is much more accepting of LGBTQ rights, doesn't want to wage that fight that their elders are fighting, but yet the elders are still kind of controlling the narrative, controlling the political fight in the red states. Where do you see the future going with that?
I mean, I think that's true with the younger generation in general. I think, whether or not you're from any religious background, because I think it's true for Muslim Americans too. A lot of, as a Muslim American myself, there's a lot of young people that just don't want to have these like kind of almost petty social conversations any longer. And maybe that will change as they age. Hopefully not. As we continue to age up, hopefully, that becomes our predominant narrative, and there's less bickering around social issues. But we start to move towards a place of accepting everybody for who they are and what they believe in and how they live their lives.
You mentioned you're a Muslim American. I was reading the really wonderful profile Lucy Gilman wrote about you when you took over the Pride Center last year. Ruth Ann Kramer says, thanks for the wider picture. Thanks for listening, Ruth Ann. You talk about, you grew up partly in Ankara, Turkey, partly in California, and that you came out first to your family here when you were in college, but you waited until you were 22, according to the article, to come out in Ankara. You were convinced that it'd be harder for them in that closed society to accept you. I think the way you put it was that you and your lover there said that in Turkey, just assume that by the time you're 30s, you're no longer gay, quote unquote, and you get married to a woman. But you were surprised when you came out.
Yeah, I mean, I've had I'm very fortunate. The reality is as a queer person, no matter what letter in the alphabet soup you represent, you have an extreme fear of coming out. Coming out is the hardest thing that I do in my life. And I say I do because there isn't some like magical, I came out of the closet, now everybody knows I'm gay and it's cool moment ever for any queer person. What I talk about a lot at the Pride Center is being queer, being LGBTQ plus means that you are an invisible minority. There's something about you that that is underrepresented in society, and you have to keep telling people that.
So what happened when you went to Turkey? How old were you? You were 22. What did you do? What was the setting, and what did people say?
I mean, I will say I have not really ever come out to large portions of my Turkish family, and probably some of them are watching right now, going, "Oh my God!" But it's just not something we talk about. One of my grandmothers does sometimes ask me, when are you going to get married to a nice young lady? And that's it's okay for me because I know that it's not coming from a place of hate.
But you said there was acceptance that you weren't expecting in Turkey.
There's acceptance of my family, for sure. And I think my family is very supportive. My Turkish side of my family is very supportive of what I do, and they understand that I'm trying to make the world better, and support that. I have an awesome mom that sends me 2 birthday cards a year, one that goes to me and one that goes to my drag persona. So I have to say I'm very lucky in how my family has accepted me. I think that it's Turkish culture is very different than American culture, especially around things like sexuality and relationships. And
where's it going under Erdogan and more of a Muslim fundamentalist society?
I haven't been to Turkey in a bunch of years, so I wouldn't want to speak necessarily on how it's shifting there. Things that I see for some of my friends that I'm friends with still on Facebook that I know are queer, a lot of them have left the country that are kind of more...
It's not just Turkey, Patrick. I mean, the authoritarian trend in starting out of Russia, going into Hungary and Poland and Philippines, it has a stated anti-gay part of it.
Yes.
That they see that as part of the threat of secular, liberal Western values that they're trying to overcome.
I mean, that same narrative exists in our administration here in the United States. I mean, having any person in office say like deny that person rights because of their sexual orientation is the same narrative. Yeah. Let's be completely transparent and honest. That's the same narrative as Russia. Maybe Russia or some of the other countries in the world are doing it in a more harsh.
So I want to get back to this double-edged environment you're dealing with.
Sure.
On the one hand, you have more. Is it fair to say you have more possibilities for organizing and being part of our community through your work in the Pride Center than our community's ever had, at least on the surface? And at the same time, there's a retrenchment going on in parts of our country and at the federal level, taking back some of the rights and acceptance that we've seen over the last bunch of years.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we live in a place right now where
I got to keep both in your head at the same time as the head of a project.
Yeah,
center,
well,
right?
And I think that we're living in a place right now where, as the queer community or the LGBTQ plus community, we are reevaluating what we're fighting for. A very large portion of our community became very focused on marriage equality, and I think that. At the time when that, particularly at the height of that, when you were seeing state after state make changes, this is pre the Supreme Court decision. You saw this kind of movement of the whole community coming together and fighting for this one specific right. And then what happened was after that right happened, there was a lot of confusion of, well, what's the next thing? What is the next thing? Here in Connecticut, there was a really amazing thing that happened, which was immediately after that. Members of our trans community that then went on to found things like CT Equality and the Transgender Coalition, people like Diana, who immediately turned around and then turned the conversation into about how are we addressing transgender rights here in Connecticut. And then that turned immediately into a conversation about how are we addressing the issue of conversion therapy in Connecticut, which was banned last year. So I think that on the micro level here in Connecticut, we shifted that conversation very quickly, versus at the national level. I think there's still debate about what is being prioritized. Are the big organizations prioritizing one thing versus some of the kind of more grassroots organizations prioritizing other things?
And Jason Gundry says hello. Ruby Melton with hearts and a smile. Thanks for listening, everybody. And what you're listening to is Patrick Dunn, director of the New Haven Pride Center, here on Pride Week. Talking about that on Dateline New Haven at WNHH FM, your home for community radio at 103.5 and live streamed at newhavenandpenn.org. Let's talk about your other personality. Is it Kiki Lucia or Lucia?
Lucia.
So Kiki Lucia is your drag personality. How did you get into drag, and what role does drag play in the life of the gay community in New Haven?
So New Haven is, I always like to say that New Haven is the epicenter of drag for Connecticut. I'm sure there are a lot of people listening from outside of New Haven that will strongly disagree with me. But we have some amazing performance venues here in New Haven. We have a really robust drag scene here. And we have phenomenal performers from in and around New Haven. We have phenomenal performers all over Connecticut, to be completely honest. But we have some amazing performers.
What drew you into being Kiki?
So one of my best friends from college started doing drag about probably more than 10 years ago. And I used to help him because I have a theater background. And so I used to help him with his makeup and come up and we'd brainstorm together when he would have a performance idea, but not sure exactly how he wanted to execute it. And, one day I was about to turn 30 years old and I felt this urge to check something off my bucket list. And the amazing Robin Banks, who I have known for many, many years and is now a very, very good friend. I went to Robin and I said, "Hey, Robin, I'm turning 30 in 2 weeks. Can I come and be in your show next week and just do like one number? You don't have to pay me. You don't have to do anything. I just really want to do this like once before I turn 30 and then I'll probably never do it again." And so Robin was like, "Sure." And I went and she ended up having me do 4 numbers.
And what were the songs?
I did Indestructible by Robin. I did Katy Perry's The One That Got Away. What else did I did?
What did you decide?
I did a Pink song.
What did you decide was going to be your approach to the role? Who was Kiki and how was Kiki to distinguish yourself? Kiki's
evolved a lot. I like to think of Kiki and the art of Kiki's drag as being protest art and protest drag. Anyone who's read any of the articles that Lucy Gelman has done, either in the Arts Paper or in the Independent, about the drag scene, and anytime I mention, I'm always protesting something. But I do a lot of pieces about like what's going on in our queer community. I just last week dedicated. I had a back to school show up in Hartford at the Shayas, and I did the show's theme was back to school, and I don't know if you heard this, but there was a young 7-year-old that was being so horribly bullied and tortured for coming out as gay that he committed suicide and had the most supportive parents possible. And the parents were just heartbroken. And I watched a lot of interviews with the mom and read a lot about the young kid. And it was a big talk in our community for the last 2 weeks, week and a half since it happened. And so what I did is last Friday, I have a number that is about suicide and my personal experience with suicidal experiences and thoughts. And it's Sia's Alive, which is a really powerful song about kind of being alive and experiencing life. And when I perform it, I come out as a school, dressed in a schoolgirl outfit and wear a noose as jewelry. And the noose is up around my neck, and perform most of the song with the noose either around my neck or pulled out. And I dedicated that performance to that kid and anybody in the audience feeling or having had experienced those feelings, which is a huge thing that affects our community. Heavy. Yeah, some of the stuff I do is heavy, and some of it's really lighthearted and fun and over the top. Like I did Girls Just Want to Have Fun at Pride the other day in my rainbow unicorn outfit.
I love that song.
But yeah, you know, sometimes you have to do things that push the boundaries of your art, and that's what I like to do with Kiki is the things that I love the most that I do are things that are meaningful to people. And when an audience member comes up to me afterwards and says, wow, that really affected me, or wow, that really changed my perspective on something.
Now, you're going to be performing again as Kiki. Am I wrong? This weekend in Pride? I thought I'd seen that.
Yeah, I tried to hang up the wig for Pride, but Luis Antonio talked me into being Escapade on Thursday night, which tomorrow night. And
at Lyric Hall.
At Lyric Hall, we have 2 performances.
9, 2 shows.
Yeah.
Are you going to do the Noose?
I'm not doing the Noose number. What I'm doing is actually this performance of True Colors by Zed. And I've actually done it in almost every version of Escapade. And it's one of those kind of really powerful pieces that I love doing. And for me, one of the things that makes it so incredible is not my performance, but actually the video that my friend Rob created for it. Every time I've done it,
the video plays while you sing. Now, do you sing and dance?
I do sing, but I usually don't sing live. I usually lip sync, which is better for the audience's ears. But my friend Rob has created, every time I do it, he creates me a new video that kind of pushes it a little further to what his vision has always been for the piece.
And what is the vision?
And it's this explosion of color and rainbow and pride and beautiful, beautiful art. And so he's created this new video. He showed it to me last night. It's absolutely stunning.
The video plays in the back.
Yeah, it's projected onto the back of the stage while I'm performing. And really, this is going to be the first time this song is this early in the show. Usually we do it later in the show, as near the end. But Luis asks me to be in the beginning with this piece, so it's almost more at the kind of the launch of the show versus a closer out.
And why did he launch with this?
I think what he's trying to do with this piece, this version of Escapade, because every version of Escapade is told kind of a little bit of a different story.
And what is Escapade?
So Escapade is this collision of drag, dance, music, and circus aerialists, and in this iteration burlesque, to tell quintessentially queer stories. So one of the pieces was his coming out story and his experience as a gay man, that he centered around the idea of running off to the circus. He did one version that was a love triangle love story between my character and 2 of the other characters that dealt with things like personal relationship building in the queer community. This piece, I was able to watch the piece last night because I'm just doing the one number. So I watched the rest of the show during rehearsal, and this piece really touched me a lot. There's this young, incredible dancer. Her name is Mimi. She goes by Rory Rowe, and she's in her drag persona. And Rory is really central to this version of Escapade in a really beautiful way. And just the opening piece, I saw her do this opening piece at Bridgeport Pride 2 years ago, and it's probably one of my favorite dance pieces I've ever seen. Just because it's such this incredible act of defiance through dance.
Now, I wanted to ask you about that protest. So what you're describing this week, unlike with the Noose, the piece you're going to do at Escapade.
Yes.
Is that a political piece? Is it a protest piece?
I would say it's a political piece.
What makes it political?
I think the idea of a queer person doing it in the context of queer pride makes it political, makes it make a statement.
What is the statement?
Because the words, when you're looking at the words, things like "I'm not going to apologize for the fire in my eyes," that word or that phrase is, to me, really in a really important place in where the queer rights movement is right now. The reality is there are some people that are very angry in our community, and they're angry for a good reason, and they don't need to apologize for being angry. They don't need to apologize for demanding equality.
What does Kiki do when that line is sung?
I stare down the audience pretty harsh. And there's this great I don't know if you know this song, but at the end there's this instrumental part that goes for probably like 15-20 seconds, and in that moment in the performance, I call out the rest of the performers because I do the piece solo on stage, and then it ends with me just staring down the audience before we go to blackout. So it's that kind of defiance and demand for equality in that moment.
All right. Well, you can be Christy Ramirez also sends you some love. Thanks for listening. Well, that's one of many things still going. We're not done with Pride Week.
This is just Thursday.
It's just Thursday Escapade from 7 and 9 p.m. at Lyric Hall. Friday, you got a prideful event gathering of Friends of Pride on the rooftop terrace at
At-
70 Audubon Street. That's
Yes.
the Community Foundation building. Cash bar, 538. Pride Barbecue at Partners, 7
Oh,
to
that
10.
one got canceled. Don't say that
All
one.
right, forget the no barbecue. The pigs are off the hook. 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. Pride Kickoff. Mr. and Miss Gay, New Haven Pageant and Partners. Saturday, Pride Zumba Razor. Pride March on Saturday at 2:30. Block Party on Center Street. That's a biggie every year, 7 hours. I'm assuming a lot of music.
Oh, yeah.
Pride After Parties at Gotham, 10 p.m. Sunday, the last day. History Walking Tour, 11 a.m. to 12:30. 12 to 4, Pride Comedy Brunch at Barracuda. Pride Drag Brunch, 12 to 4. You got your choice between two there.
Or you could do both.
Or both, 116 Crown. And it ends up with a Pride Tea Dance at York Street, 168 York, 4 to 8 p.m. Patrick Dunn, thanks so much for coming in.
Thanks for having
It
me.
was great. Congratulations on another great year of Pride. I hope it ends with a roar.
I hope so. I want to, I just want to say congratulations to our whole community for coming together this week, and happy Pride.
And thanks, everyone, for listening. And stare them down. Get the message out. Thanks for listening, everyone. Thanks so much to Patrick Dunn, Executive Director of New Haven Pride Center. Thanks to Yale New Haven Hospital for providing support for today's program. We're going to take it out with the Afro-Semitic Experience performing I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free from the group CD, A Plea for Peace. Now, we know what it's like to be free. We just got to remember to book our flight. Fly free with us all day and all night here at WNHH, New Haven's home for community radio.